This context has been echoed in the report of the National Consultation on Law and Order, which stated the decline in law and order results from a decline in values. That is the National Consultation on Law and Order in Barbados, echoing the points that I've just made, that there is a relationship between the decline in the norms and values and a decline in the behavior being witnessed. So the traditional agencies of socialization, again quoting from the report, especially family, school, church, and community, had failed to transmit the core values of respect, good manners, honesty, integrity, and discipline. We therefore become naturally concerned when the change, which I said must happen, when that change is considered negative or when it moves too far or too fast away from the current standard. And to illustrate, two recent examples of concern expressed in Barbados about central aspects of Barbadian culture where the commentators felt that we had moved too far away from those standards. And the first is from Reverend Curtis Goodridge, and I'm quoting from the Nation newspaper, June 22nd, 2012, a couple months ago. And this is at a funeral. I believe it was of an accident victim. Some young women were wearing outfits not fit even for the bedroom. Goodridge said he was so shocked by the kaleidoscope of colors, the exposed tattoos and flesh, that he was forced to speak about it at the start of the service, prompting some young people to exit the church. Quoting from Father Goodridge, I remarked that crop over was in the church. I thought I was at Kadooment. I thought some of those things were costumes. Their dress was outrageous. The church has standards. The church has rules and regulations set out by God in the scriptures. Our people need to know that they must uphold standards. So here is a response from a Barbadian citizen about where he saw standards had moved too far away from what was acceptable. And the second example from Corey Worrell, former CARICOM Youth Ambassador, writing in the Nation newspaper in his column, All Right Then, last week actually, August 23rd, 2012, about Kadooment. I observed how revealing and ridiculous some of the female costumes were. There was this particular costume which was white in color, shaped like a V at the front, with the point of the V being very thin, covering only the center of the vulva, and the two long sides concealing just the nipple, and for some women, the areola. Some females stuck tape over the areola, but there was this one female whose breasts were fully exposed at all times. I was like, these people for real? This is what it has come to? I know many will argue, that this is just one day to relax and let loose. But morals, decency, and standards transcend any occasion. Now, those are two representations of Barbadians commenting on what they see and perceive as a slippage of norms and values away from commonly accepted standards. And there are several other examples that you can cite. For those of you who are technologically savvy, go up on justbeijing.com as suggested by Corey Worrell, and you will see represented there, if you didn't attend Kadooment, some of what he is referring to. So, changing norms and values in Barbados. There is increasing evidence, again, I don't have the time to go into it, but there is increasing evidence that changing gender roles, emerging definitions of masculinity and femininity, that is what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman, are at the root of some of the social problems that we are facing. Some of the social problems around HIV and AIDS, some of the gender-based violence which we are witnessing, and increasingly shocking examples of gender-based violence in our society, some of the substance abuse, the crime, and even issues like unemployment. There is evidence that many of these things are rooted in how we define ourselves as men and women, what people are prepared to accept as men and women in contemporary Barbados. Secondly, there is also increasing evidence of changing values in Barbados, manifested in the increasing levels of individualism. This is something I would like to talk to for the whole day, and I've referred so often to how our youngsters are being socialized in an environment that is increasingly individualistic. Those of you who have heard me speak have heard me talk about the fact that our youngsters hardly play with one another anymore. They are one-on-one with the Nintendo, Game Boy, GameCube. They have things stuck in their ears. They're listening to music. They interact with nobody except in the virtual world. And a lot of the things that our children grew up doing and having to do in common by way of recreation contributed to the formation of a sense of sharing, a sense of discipline, a sense of organization, a sense of rules. If you were playing cricket out on the pasture, there was no umpire, but there was universal determination of when you were out. Even things like flying a kite, which seemed to be individual, was no fun unless you had somebody to lag. And therefore, all of our recreation as children took place communally. Today, hardly any of our recreation takes place communally. It is very individualistic, and it is creating individualistic children. And worse than that, a lot of the games and so on that the youngsters are playing, you get points, you score, you advance by how much violence you can mete out, how many people you can kill. And those of you who have not checked them out, you'd better check them out in terms of what your children are engaging in. So, what can be done? First of all, I want to advise, to the extent that I'm listened to in this forum, against formulating any intervention that starts, we need to get back. That's a favorite phrase that we use when we talk about values. We need to get back, or we need to go back. You can't go back. Social change is not like that. You cannot take Barbados back to the 1930s and 40s. That's right. Because social change and society has moved on. Yeah. And many of us begin talking to our children, and I'm using the first person plural because I do it too. When I was your age, how many of you have begun a conversation with your children like that? When I was your age, I couldn't, or I had to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you're not their age anymore, and in some respects, they are almost yours in the terms of the information they have at their disposal. So we can't go back. What we can do, however, is to embark on a program of social engineering. It's a term I know that frightens some people, but in my view, it is exactly what is being proposed at this consultation. Because when I look at the topic, it says in the subtopic, shaping a brighter tomorrow. Now, if we can't shape, we might as well all pack up our things and go back home and resign ourselves to what will happen. So there is a presupposition that we can determine what happens. We can therefore embark on the program of social engineering, a deliberate process of identifying, promoting, transmitting, and supporting those norms and values that we consider central to Barbadian society.